Welcome to the Intrapreneur Stories. This is our second episode. I'm currently sitting at Parcify or Future Lab office here together with first intrapreneur at Bpost, Pieter Dewulf. Hi, Pieter. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Pieter, tell us something about yourself. You are the initial founder of Bringr, but I think everyone wants to know where you came from, where you're heading to, and what is Bringr?
All right, so maybe just a short introduction on myself. I studied as an interpreter, but I went straight into business when I started working. I worked at Belgium for 8 years in several positions, but I ended up as a project manager at Belgacom. But in 2007, I moved to Bpost. I've been working there for 11 years now as a corporate project manager. And in the last 4 years, I've been hardcore into innovation within Bpost. So we had two big innovation projects, which you could call disruptive innovation. Although the concepts already existed abroad, they didn't exist in Belgium. And Bpost decided they wanted to be the first mover in the Belgian market. So in that sense,
it seems like you ran through a couple of milestones for the company Bpost itself. I mean, 2007, obviously you have the financial crisis. There was the transition going from a government corporation to
private one,
private held one. How did that influence the company, in your opinion? How did you see maybe a transformation in the entire structure?
Well, before I came to Bpost, the whole transformation was done from being a government company to a private one. There was a whole reorganization of the operational department. There's been a lot of cost savings that have been done, productivity gains, and some professionalization of the company. So when I got there, they were already a long way going in that direction. But then in the 10 years that I was there, it moved from the whole product-oriented selling to service-oriented selling to customer-oriented. We had the introduction of Bpost on the stock exchange, which has been done, which was a big one as well.
And then, how was the energy during that time? I mean, going from government to private owned, that must already take like a lot of effort for pretty much every employee at the company.
Well, it's obviously something that had been prepared or had been in preparation for years and years. You don't just decide to go to the stock exchange and just hope that everything will go well. So the whole preparation had been ongoing for years, but obviously the IPO itself was a big project, and I was part of it as well. For a small part of it in the financial department. But it was yet another move in professionalizing the company, in being more customer-oriented, in looking further than just the borders of Belgium, seeing what's going on, the big tendencies in the world, the e-commerce, the parcel business that was emerging. So it just made sure that Bpost acted more like a private company who is supposed to look forward, who is supposed to make sure it identifies the threats and looks at the opportunities of the world around.
Exactly, and that's where you came in with the radical new new solution being Bringr.
Exactly. So one of those tendencies that Bpost identified was the emerging importance of peer-to-peer markets. So it was not a new concept. Even the peer-to-peer delivery market was already tested abroad. We had Uber who was doing some testing in San Francisco. There was Stewart in France. There were several examples of companies and startups moving in that market. And Bpost decided that they didn't want to just wait for some company to come over to Belgium and take market share, but they wanted to be the first mover and take action themselves in that new emerging market.
I see, I see. Because indeed, I mean, at this point, we have Uber in Belgium. Uber Eats is taking a stronghold, as well as Deliveroo. And to what extent do you feel these companies are also aiming for the parcel delivery market at this point?
Well, they are, but as we also saw with Bringr, it is more of it complements the traditional parcel delivery market, and I don't think it's likely to replace it very soon, because with Bringr we identified and we learned that it was mostly used by small businesses. It was used for express delivery. It was used by people who didn't have the appropriate means of transportation. But it's not something, price-wise, it can't replace the advantages of a huge, dense delivery network as Bpost traditionally has.
You do have a lot of market experience, network to leverage in this story. Yeah? But looking at Bringr itself, if you had to pitch it in one sentence, or your unique selling proposition of Bringr, what would it be, so that everyone understands what Bringr is, of course?
Well, Bringr allows everybody to send whatever they want to wherever they want. And on the other side, anyone can actually make some extra money by using their existing means of transportation for the service of Bringr.
So it's picking in on extreme convenience, of course, which is a crucial one, but then also in terms of people who have flexible hours, flexible job opportunities, who can then help carry their efforts in delivering these parcels.
Yeah, so there's actually the flexibility for the drivers, who can just decide at any moment if they want to do a job or not. So they're absolutely free to choose when or which job they want to do. They also saw how much money they were going to make with a job. They could check if the transport job was on their route that they were going to do anyway, if they were by car or by bike. And on the other side, the senders, the ones paying for the service, they had the extreme convenience of choosing the time and exact time and place of pickup and delivery, which is something that is not possible today, or not, let's say, for a reasonable price. And it could be delivered at the same day. So it was kind of a cheap express service, more expensive than a classic parcel, but we saw that it doesn't replace the classic parcel business anyway. So it's a complementary type of business
exactly.
For Bpost.
More inner city related, let's say.
Yeah, well, we did see that the average stretch that was driven or by the drivers by car was over 20 kilometers. So it was generally used for, let's say, areas the big suburban areas.
Yeah.
Although we also had transports of like 150 kilometers, people who were transporting their bikes to the sea for their weekend, and then they just took the train themselves.
Yeah, this surpasses the parcel size, let's say.
That's something you can't do with any classic courier service.
Of course. And then looking at the process, because I think this would be the major milestone that the Bpost took, and was also majorly thanks to you, the setup of this corporate venture in the end. What was the beginning? What was the trigger? And I mean, the trigger was, of course, the peer-to-peer market opportunities and the trends that were occurring abroad. But how did you get started at this point?
Well, what happened is that before Bringr, we did another big innovation, which was city logistics. And well, we were 3 people doing city logistics. And when it ended, it was like the perfect timing with the whole peer-to-peer thing that arose. So we kind of flawlessly moved into the next innovation. We had the experience of the first one. We knew we had some people with the right skills to do the startup, go from 0 to 1. So we had the opportunity to just move straight into Bringr. So it's because it's always difficult to find the right people to do such projects. You need the right skills, and I think we had.
That is also a very interesting question,
Yeah.
because also our previous intrapreneur, Stan van Havermaat from Orgalux, had that exact same question, actually aimed at you. So indeed, what is the best structure in identifying, firstly, the right types of people? So if you had to describe them on a whiteboard, you mentioned 3 people. Who are those people? What are the assets that they need to have? And what do you use within your company to find these people?
Yeah, it's a good question. But for me, it's quite clear. I think you need, well, we had 3 people, and you may have 4, depending on the kind of startup you do. If it's more technology-based, you obviously need somebody with a good IT skills, who knows what's going on, who's gets along with the new trends. So you need, in that case, for Bringr, for example, a really strong IT skilled person. And then for me, the other ones are, you always need somebody who is more operational, process, organization oriented. And you need somebody who knows how to do competition analysis, market analysis, who knows how to market and sell stuff, who knows about pricing. So that's like one kind of, let's say, marketing, sales skill.
Marketing guru.
You have an IT guru. You have the guy who gets things done practically.
The operations
The
guru.
operations guy. And then there's always also the person who like keeps the overview, who has a strong strategic skills, who's a kind of the one who keeps the overview of everything, who has analytical skills and strategic skills. But I think it's important that each one of those profiles is not really too nerdy-wise into his own domain, but you need to have an open mind and need to know about the other ones too, because the job description is not very aligned when you're in a startup, so you have to be able to work.
I guess you're aiming at a jack of all trades, somebody who has eaten, or the Dutch expression is eaten a bit of cheese all around.
Yeah.
So as somebody who has a broad spectrum of what is going on within, let's say, a vertical. And which person were you in that story, if I may ask?
I'm always more of the guy who gets things done.
That explains your CEO position at this point at Bpost.
Yes, probably. So I'm always historically and also character-wise, I'm good at structuring, bringing structure to chaos, getting things moving, get things done, doing process management, managing operations and stuff like that. So that was my role in both innovations. But it's always interesting to talk about and to discuss with the other ones about all the different topics, because in the end, you're one team and you're supposed to move on together with the product or the service you're developing.
Exactly. And so in that phase, you were one of the co-founders together with the 2 other people there. But now you changed to actually a different corporate venture in this at this point. What happened there? What's the transition? Was there some rotation in people within the team of Bringr?
Well, what happened is, and it's also part of what happened with City Logistics, one of our tasks was to do market analysis, to look at companies who are active in the same kind of business that you are, and that could potentially help you to grow faster, or where you have overlapping activities or market proposition. And that's what we did with City Logistics, which resulted in the takeover of City Depot. And the same was there for Bringr, which resulted in the takeover of Parcify by Bpost. And in both cases, we integrated the activities of of both companies. We both had our specialties, but we had a lot of common ground. And bundling the two together makes sure you have a more complete offer towards the customer, whilst being more efficient in the parts that you have in common.
Exactly.
So that's what we did for in both cases.
Okay. So, and indeed, Parcify and Bringr merged. In the end, it became Parcify, the beautiful office in which we are at this point. But during that process, it must have been also difficult to some extent to kind of pinpoint the success factors. I mean, speaking from experience at Bundle, I know that you always set out a couple of KPIs, objective KPIs, to measure your success. But in the end, they keep changing, they keep adapting, and in the end, you also come up with a couple of subjective success measurements.
All right.
How can you relate to this in terms of Bringr?
Well, it's always a bit out of the comfort zone of corporate management to not have clear KPIs and objectives when working in innovation. So we did set some quantitative KPIs because managers like that, and it gives you something to hold on to.
It's good security.
But I think apart from that, you have a lot of qualitative KPIs. And I always think it's important to measure the way you handled the startup and the evolution of the startup. So you could also try to translate that into quantitative KPIs, but it's more about how fast did you do experiments? How often did you iterate? Why did you iterate? Did you interpret the results of your experiments in a correct way in order to eliminate certain options or alternatives? Why did you decide to go on in a certain way? Did you read the signals right? How did you use your budget? Did you spend it on stuff that actually learned you something and gave you some new insights? So you could fail in the end with a startup, but you could have managed the startup in a really good way while still failing in the end. So I think in the end, it's not a failure. If you manage the startup well and you decided to stop it, it would still be a good decision, even if in the end there's not a product or a service. But that's very discomforting for higher management. So you need people who are quite open-minded to, let's say, unassigned budgets or not having any forecasts or not even knowing exactly what the product or the service is going to look like. And it's a bit scary to put in money on that without knowing what's going to happen in the end.
I can imagine that even though it's a corporate venture and you got a lot of freedom in operating, there were still some steering moments. I mean, you did have a steerco, if that's an assumption that I can make.
We did have, let's say, it was more like a sounding board or a steerco. You can call it whatever you want, but you need people high up in the hierarchy who are willing to guide you, to challenge you, to give you advice, but don't force any directions on you. And that was what we had, luckily. So we have some people like that in the direction committee of Bpost. For Bringr, we had our CEO of Parcels and Logistics, Pieter Dewulf, and President of Europe Parcels, Luc Kloet. And they were the people who guided us. And we didn't show up with fancy PowerPoint presentations or really clear results. We just showed everything we learned, where we were at, and they guided us and gave us advice throughout the whole process. And another one that is, so it helps you to stay out of corporate politics. It helps you to stay out of the corporate project validation committees and whatever they are. You have the people right there who can give you the funds to go on or to stop. And I think those funds also need to stay out of let's say, the corporate wallet. So so you're able to stay out as much as you can out of the corporate politics.
Yeah, I think that's also one of our core beliefs at Bundle, saying that okay, we don't want to get entangled in the web that is a corporate structure, or at least get stuck in the legacy that
Right.
of the processes there. But during that process, I mean, you even when not being a strategy designer, you always have a couple of phases. And let's say you create your value proposition. Prior to that, you do your market research. You make an alpha, you test it, you create your valuable, fundable business case, and then that's where you start actually building. Was this also somewhat the pattern that you can find? And to what extent was the corporation transparent in fundings that were available? And was there also, let's say, a floodgate system?
It was not really structured, especially when we started with City Logistics. There was just no prior experience in that on those topics. So what we do, and what I also started before being in innovation, was using vision canvases. So the classic one-pager showing the customer problem, the customer segments, you have the solution design, the value proposition. So the classic elements that you kind of fill in with all the assumptions you have, and then the whole process just goes from there, and you start testing those different hypotheses in the most efficient way, let's say time and budget related. And then you just try to do some experiments every week, couple of weeks, and you go from there. And at some point you need some money to actually build your first design or your first prototype.
Yeah.
But the whole argument there is, if you spend some money building your prototype, it will allow you to actually test it and then decide if you want to go on building a real product or not, and how that real product should look like based on the experience you have with the prototype. So it may actually save you a lot of money in the long run by just spending some in the early stages of the whole startup.
Of course, but you need to be convincing enough, or at least have a game plan ready
Right.
to a certain extent to already.
Well, that's why we use also like the outcome hypothesis. So if you define the learnings you want to do with an experiment, you also define what you would consider a success at the end of that experiment. If you would say that, I don't know, 7 people out of 10 can associate themselves with a problem setting you're doing, and there's only 3, well, you invalidate your assumption, and that may mean that you will not continue with that alternative of your solution. But if 7 people actually do or more, well, you have some objective results to show that you're in the right direction.
There is potential.
There's potential, and that's the kind of outcome that should be enough in a startup to get some additional funding for next experiments or for prototype building.
And then, I mean, you had this wonderful trajectory. Looking in hindsight, let's say, what would you say are your key learnings at this point? Like, if you could turn back time, what would you do differently?
That's always a difficult one, although we brainstormed about that as well. So I think what is really important, and that you probably never do enough, is be very critical towards your own product or service, because you want to believe that people want it and that people need it. So you cannot try to justify results. You really have to be critical to what you're learning by doing your experiments, and be able to say, well, this is not going to work, even though I would like it and it's my little baby. Maybe it's not what people are waiting for.
How do you go about that? Like, not getting your nose too close to the book?
Well, I think one of the smart things to do is to talk about people who are not really as involved as you are. So I think one of the smart things to do is get smart allies.
Surround yourself with smart
have
people.
expert advice, talk to a lot of people, and just remind yourself that you're not supposed to be goal seeking when you're in a startup, because that will get you failed in the end anyway. So I think that's one thing. And another one probably is that you can always do more with less. So if you have a budget, you're likely to spend your budget. So if you ask yourself the question, what if I had like only a tenth of my budget? Would I have been able to get the same results? And what would I have done differently? And you can always come up with some more bright ideas of how things could have gone faster or cheaper. But it's always difficult, and it's always easy afterwards to make those reflections.
I guess with your operational background as COO, these things tend to come up with you a lot of times.
Exactly. So, well, it's a whole different job. If you're in a job in operations, as I'm doing now, or if you're in a job doing operations, but in a startup, you're in a whole different mental state. So it's fun to do both, or to have some variety in what you're doing. But well, I guess it's not for everybody. It's not suited for everybody to live in a very unsure environment as a startup, for example, because well, we actually, as intrapreneurs, we gave up our jobs to start this adventure, which could have led to a failure or to stopping the startup, maybe even after 1 or 2 months. If the preliminary results were negative, it could have been the end of the startup, whilst giving up, while not going back to the previous job, because you gave up your previous job.
Okay.
So
there's a risk involved.
There's a risk involved, so you need to have a leap of faith. You need to jump and see how it goes from there. So even as an intrapreneur, there's always some risk involved. It's not your own money you're spending, but still, it's not really, well, there's still quite some involvement there from a personal point of view.
That's indeed a risky yet good undertaking, let's say, to that point. Is there anything you would like to say to maybe future intrapreneurs or intrapreneurs that are currently aspiring to go outside the company walls as well with their projects? Maybe some hints that you'd like to give to them?
For intrapreneurs? Okay.
Or even entrepreneurs. I mean...
Well, I do have to say that I don't consider myself as an expert, because I think every project or startup is different, and you never know what it's going to end up like. But I think you have to believe in what you're doing, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're taking a lot more personal risks than if you're an intrapreneur. But if you're an intrapreneur like myself, I think you need some good, skilled people working with you, and preferably people that you get along with well, because it's important to have a good atmosphere in a small team, and to all feel like you're working together for the same goal. And as I've said before, you need to be critical towards what you're doing, and think back and reconsider, and just, well, try to get also some structure in the chaos. And that's why we use those methodologies like in the Lean Startup, the vision canvases, experiment reports. So you always need to not just work from the stomach, from the belly, but also have some structure in the way you're approaching the startup, although it's quite a chaotic environment to work in.
All right, I think that's a good way to inspire some youngsters out there, or even more experienced intrapreneurs. Lastly, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Stan at the end of his interview. Do you have a pressing question that we can ask our next intrapreneur? In fact, his name is Christopher Waldner. He's not an actual intrapreneur, but more an entrepreneur in residence. So a freelance intrapreneur, as you will. So do you maybe have any questions that you would like to ask him as well?
Well, probably because we have been fortunate to have good people working on the innovation projects within Bpost, so we didn't have the real struggle to find people or to see if they were available, or have some kind of incentive program for people joining innovative projects in a company. So I would be very interested in seeing how other companies deal with attracting people into a bit more risky entrepreneurial adventures, and how they convince them to take that chance. So that's something I'm quite interested in.
All right. Well, there you heard it. Thank you very much, Pieter, for your time.
All right, you're very welcome.
And I suggest we go for another beer.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you very much for being here with us. And we look forward to our next interview, which will be with Christopher Waldner. We'll be launching new episodes every 2 weeks on Monday from now. So check out our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, put it in your agenda, check out Intrapreneur Stories on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure to leave your questions for the Intrapreneurs in the comment section below. We're looking forward to answering them and looking forward to seeing you again. Take care.